Thank you for tuning in to our very interesting track on human resources. We are all set to begin with our first session, which is going to be a very interesting fireside chat on people analytics for a hybrid world of work. And it is such a pleasure to welcome Mr. Saurabh Dwivedi, partner at Deloitte. And of course, joining us is Dr. Suryanarayan Iyer, Senior Director, Solutions Engineering, Oracle India. Gentlemen, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much, Isha. Thanks for the opportunity. And Dr. Iyer, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this chat with you.
It's indeed a pleasure. Thanks, Isha. Thanks, Saurabh.
Thanks. So let me start by putting some context on the conversation today, right? It's on future of work. And we've heard a lot of organizations talking about future of work and how HR organizations are adapting to the entire gamut of things that are happening across future of work, right? From our point of view, there are four things that are really important, right? One is how HR organizations have become more adaptable, needing to operate within an ecosystem that learns and pivots to help ensure survival of the overall system. It is built around networks and allowing people to distribute and maximize human potential. The second area that we're seeing a lot of HR organizations focusing on is around architecting, how HR professionals are architecting holistic end-to-end solutions that yield relevant, measurable value for the enterprise. And these HR practitioners are centering their solutions by applying design thinking, prototyping, and connecting to create solutions that work and flex over time. The third important element has been around agility. How HR teams are failing fast, yet learning faster. This means that they're experimenting and eliminating the pressure to achieve perfection. Collaboration is the most important element and is emphasized to deliver proactively, iteratively, and frequently promoting agility across the wider enterprise. And the last and the most important element of future work and HR organizations is around being augmented. How HR professionals are embracing the augmented technologies, combining technologies and solution providers to augment their roles and work. With this introduction, Dr. Iyer, and I'll call you Surya from now on.
Yep.
I just wanted to, get your thoughts, right? When we think about future of work and the advancements that have happened, especially in the past 18 months, given the onset of the pandemic, right. How do you think the HR functions have evolved themselves? And do you see any change in how HR functions are actually measuring their performance?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very relevant topic. And I think, Saurabh, you actually highlighted the four aspects that you spoke about. And that's indeed the reality of the pandemic and the post-pandemic reality. I would probably go a step further and go into the HR function. And I always believe it is the line manager, which is the larger HR function, so to say. And then there is the HR department, the facilitators, the change agents who drive things. So I see fundamental shifts in the way we are looking at not only measuring ourselves, but looking at how we are delivering that kind of an experience that we want for the employee, because that's the central piece that we're talking about. And I'm increasingly seeing the first change is the entire aspect of moving away from reviewing to coaching. I mean, if you actually see the manager-employee relationship was of a reviewing way, and then we have been face-to-face, it was always possible. But with the remote working, there is that much more empathy that you need to bring in, that is that much more concern for health and wellness, mental stability that needs to come in. And I see a big shift moving with managers moving largely towards coaching. And I myself, in my own leadership role, I see great benefit in moving away from a reviewing culture to a coaching culture. That's the first thing. The second is it's no longer about how many hours you spend to work, outcome orientation. So as long as the customer is happy, as long as you are delivering quality, I don't think there is a. So that's the other shift that we are seeing in the current context. The third, and this is very significant, and I'm seeing this. In earlier days, when there used to be a significant meeting, I mean, the meeting room can house 20 people or 10 people or 15 people. And we used to select who are all going to be the people who are going to come into the meeting. Very simplistically today, those 10 people remain. But from a participation point of view, from a learning point of view, the digital platforms and the remote working is actually allowing for more people to come in, more as observers, not as contributors, but then that's a great learning. So the shadow leadership as a fundamental, we are able to do it much better than what we were. So the live experience that we are able to give people, that's the post-pandemic. The fourth one, women at work, their constraints, given the cultural frameworks, people especially abled, their mobility challenges no longer is a challenge anymore. So diversity is another thing that we are extremely well set to move towards. And I see an increasing amount of diversity given these constraints that has gone away. And finally, the last one that I'm also seeing is the nature of employment. With remote working becoming a reality, the entire aspect of opportunity marketplaces and realizing the value of gig workforces is increasing. And hence the employment contracts, the shape of the employment contracts itself is undergoing a change. So to me, these are the five fundamental shifts where HR itself is seeing a change and measuring its own performance against. Saurabh.
Very, very relevant. Thanks, Surya. So are you seeing a shift in how HR functions are actually measuring their performance now? What are the top 2 or 3 metrics that you're seeing, new metrics that HR is measuring at the moment?
Correct. So I will not say there are new metrics. The fundamental levers and the dimensions are the same. It's just that the way we are looking at it and what we are measuring is, and that has relevance to what I said earlier, right? So 3 fundamental metrics that we always talk about, which is productivity. The second is engagement, and the third is experience. Correct. Now, productivity, as I said, we moved away from hours at work. We moved away from that to an outcome based. So I think it's all about now output, quality of output, timeliness of output, responsiveness, right? And obviously customer satisfaction, which is a related an antecedent to actually output. Actually, so if you say my quality of output has an antecedent to customer satisfaction, and again, internal customer satisfaction, external customer satisfaction. So that's, I think, one of the very important things on productivity that we're looking at. The second is on engagement, and when I look at engagement, it's actually a function of 3 things. It's about efficiency, it's about effectiveness, and it's about responsiveness. So if I look at employee as a centerpiece and I look at engagement, it's about adoption of my signaling processes. It's about adoption of the policies and how I'm able to render it to them in a plus, and I always call it as a plus jumbo experience. So say earlier it was a transactional experience. Can I use digital technologies to make it a more beautiful experience, a wonderful experience for the employee? And I think the engagement is all about value creation through adoption and experience that we bring to the. And the third one, as I said, and that's why I'm bringing in experience, it's about the journeys, right? And the example that I always give here is earlier a transfer transaction used to say, a person gets transferred from one location to another, and it used to be a system transaction to say a person moved from this department to this department or whatever. Now it's about using all the technologies and the force of digital transformation that we have, and that's a reality, right? I mean, it's been the pandemic has forced upon us to actually look beyond and say, can I give that experience to say, oh, you're going to Hong Kong, shifting to Hong Kong, the place where you're going to nearest to office, these are the condos that typically our employees stays in, so you want to probably go there. Or these are the nearest schools that you have a 9-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid, these are the nearest schools that your child can go to. Or you are a Gujarati or a Tamilian, these are the nearest Gujarati cuisines that you can go to. I mean, this is the kind of plus experience that we're looking at. So these are the 3 metrics, I mean, in the same areas of productivity, engagement, and experience that I see as a shift, sort of.
Absolutely. This is useful, Surya, but I see a fundamental issue in this, and this is based on our experience of working with a lot of clients, right? We're talking about these metrics, we're talking about real-time measurement and all that stuff, right? But there are so many conversations that organizations are having around HR analytics, right? And they're investing a lot of money in HR analytics, but eventually, they're not getting the return on investment. They're not, struggling with HR analytics, and finally it is becoming reporting, right? Okay. In your perspective, your experience, what have you seen as being the success metrics, or the success factors for creating, a strong HR analytics platform for an organization?
Okay. This is very interesting, and we work with a lot of customers in this space. And when we typically go around adoption, because the first level obviously is automation, and an outcome of automation is the kind of data that you are able to collect, and then the associated analytics we are able to achieve. There are 4 fundamental levers that I always talk to people about, and from a conceptual point of view, I derive value in it. The first, and to me, the most important thing is data governance, right? And when I say data governance, it's about data timeliness, it is about data accuracy, correct? And more importantly, data ownership. A lot of times what happens is, organizations implement these systems, they automate their processes, they create loads and loads of data. But when it comes to analytics, their own trust in their own data becomes the biggest issue. And that comes from various factors, right? One is obviously the loss of control. And to say it doesn't happen here, data can say whatever, but it's the gut that is over the. So data governance has data ownership as a primary, and data ownership obviously has a dependent things like, should we have those excuses to say data is not accurate, data is not timely, data is not complete. So to me, data governance becomes very important. And one other piece of data governance is also data privacy. There are those ethical considerations that have to be looked at. What kind of data can I actually store? What can I not store? What can I process? What I cannot process? And it has to be done in the ambit of that. And to me, data governance includes that part in addition to data ownership. That's first part. That's a data ownership. The second is obviously a thorough infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, well, there's a hardware, there's a software, and that the systems related to it. But to me, infrastructure is more about the architecture. It's more about my own readiness to say, what do I really want to do given my current context? I mean, the world can do whatever with analytics, but there has to be a contextualization to my organization, and to that extent, the infrastructure has to be ready. So it can be the system infrastructure, it can be the systems integration to each other, the amount of data that I want to use, what do I want to measure, and the realism associated to that. So to me, infrastructure is a larger subject that we're talking about. The third one is a skill set. No amount of data is useful unless and until we have the manager cognition to ask the right questions. So do we even know what questions do we want to measure? So I think this entire aspect about understanding what we want to measure and what are the right questions to ask. And this is my personal, and in this entire journey, that is this descriptive, diagnostic, prescriptive, we keep that, and I'm keeping that conceptual discussion aside. But it's very important to understand that it's not always the what questions that matter. Real analytics is when you're asking people to ask the why questions, the how questions, and what if questions. And I think if we change the nature of our questions towards the how questions, the why questions, and the what if questions, probably the utilization of analytics will be much better. And the last one is mindset. We ourselves have to drive adoption. If we don't trust our data, if we don't trust our own analytics, if we don't ask the questions, I mean, if we go into an attribution bias to ask questions that are more favorable to us rather than asking the hard questions that are good for the business, then probably we have an issue. And I think that is a fundamental mind shift of letting go our past ways of doing things and doing the new things. That is very important. So in summary, data governance, infrastructure, the right skill sets, and the mindsets is the four important critical aspects that I would say is a critical success factors for the analytics. And that's been the experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. So Surya, very interesting. I think the last 2 points, right? I'll pick up on those, the skill sets and the mindsets, right? You've spoken more from a people manager, leaders perspective, but this also means that HR needs to learn new skill sets, right? Focus on new skills. So what, according to you, would be the skills of the future, next leap skills and all that? So what's your perspective on that?
Okay, I have said one already, which is the analyst skills. It's about asking the right questions. It's about having the right mindset of letting go. It's about challenging status quo and say, so I think the first skill is about the mindset and the aspect about asking the right question. So to that extent, understanding of business, having a research mindset, building those skills of how do you build hypothesis. I think those kinds of skills become important when you have to ask the right questions. And unless and until I have a thorough understanding of business and the context, I probably can't ask the right questions, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece is also related to the one which I call is a disruptor mindset. So I'm taking that to say, can I question status quo? Can I question those basic models? If somebody says, I can use digital technologies to do video interviews, right? I mean, technology can give you, it can do pattern analysis, it can give you. But then do I have the necessary will as well as the power within the organization amongst leadership to make that change? Right. So that's the second skill that I would say is very important. And to that extent, then it's the thinker skill that is important, because I can't do that until I can think out of the box. And if I get into this mode of not done here really, then it becomes a big issue. Now, having put all this together, which are basically all related to mindset and a different way of doing things, I should also be a believer in that. So I should be able to evangelize. It's all about the communication. It's all about be able to drive change. It's all about being able to take people on your side and drive adoption, because any amount of thinking, any amount of changing processes, any amount of implementing new systems and processes doesn't work if it is not adopted. So I think evangelism skill, thinking skill, disrupting skills, and analyst skills are the four new kinds of skills that I would say are the things that we should look at. HR, otherwise there's all the other skills, right? Empathy, talent. I mean, that's regular business.
Yeah, that's a given, right? Those are the basic skills HR folks need to have. I think this is a good framework that you've given, and thanks, Surya, for that. Now, again, you alluded to this point in the response to the previous question. We've seen enough and more examples or use cases of exponential technologies across the entire value chain of the organization, right? So supply chain, logistics, marketing. HR has been a little slow in adopting or adapting to AI, ML, NLP, or whatever, right? You have chatbots here and there, but why is this happening? And what are some of the typical use cases that you see in the market of exponential technologies in HR?
So the use cases of technologies, I mean, there are very clear good use cases in recruiting, particularly when we are talking about a job to employee match. And there's a lot of AI based search capabilities that you can go, where the quality of the search is much better than the typical contextual search. So AI based, ML based search with the right learning models is actually able to give us a good search. The second is, again, given the data set, and I spoke about data governance here, given the right amount of data sets, I also see a lot of promise in prescriptive career paths, in prescriptive learning paths. So I don't want to bloat it all together, but I'm saying there is a lot of thing where, you know, there is a persona based profiling that happens, and based on the persona based profiling using artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, there is a lot that can be done and is being done in the area of learning prescription as well as career prescription. So I see clear use cases for that. But having said that, the flip side of this, and I'll quickly enumerate. I know I'm conscious of time. Very quickly, three important points. One is the complexity of the phenomenon, right? And when I say, I'll give you an example: individual performance, team performance, organization performance. We're still figuring out how to connect the three. And let me be very frank about it. I mean, we see so many. We talk about individual. We still struggling that. So when our fundamental processes and the complexity of the phenomenon itself is so diverse, writing an algorithm for that becomes even more difficult, right? And then people trusting the algorithm, because I mean, my own experience, when I go and tell a customer that, no, this is the AI and this is a model that I built, they ask me, what is the algorithm built on? And will that logic work for my organization? I'm not able to answer that question clearly, right? I mean, because that's the training models are set to be so. That's the first thing. The second is the data sets. The data sets that we give is what trains the machine. Now, I have this, I was reading a research paper and it brought out very clearly. We spoke about a particular gender leadership in manufacturing. The past data doesn't have an example of that particular gender in manufacturing leadership at all. The machine has learned that it is not possible at all. And whenever it gives a prescription, it never gives that gender as an option at all. Now, that's the problem with the data set. And that is something that's the biggest noise that can be there, that can artificial intelligence can create. Right? The third one, which is most important, is the justice perceptions. I am using your data. To what extent am I using your data for automatically defining your career path or defining your performance? When people get into that mode, the acceptance of whether machines are the right units to do my career planning or my performance is a big justice perception mindset that we need to bring into employees. And I go back to data ownership. When we don't trust our own data, when our processes are so complex that we can't write algorithms, how do we convince our employees to accept the results of? So these are some ground level problems that we are actually encountering, Saurabh.
Thanks. And I know we are almost at the top of our time, but one last question, right, Surya? How is Oracle pushing the boundaries? How are you making sure that that HR is future ready?
Right. So I have 5 areas, and I'll quickly run through it within 2 minutes. The first one, as I said, we are investing big time on experience. So we are moving away from navigation-based systems. So basically saying, can it be conversational? So, or can you be guided? So the question, if it is a transfer transaction, it'll ask me a question rather than making me follow a navigation. So it ask me a question: whom do you want to transfer? Why do you want to transfer? Which department to which department? So it's more question oriented and makes it very easy. The other is obviously the prevalence of mobile first digital bots, and Oracle is completely moving towards mobile first and digital bots. And that is what we call as a conversational UI, where you talk in your natural language with the system and get your things done. Right? The second piece of experience is about journeys, and I gave that experience of transfers. It's not about a transaction anymore. It's about the plus experience, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece is adoption. Adoption, I'll give you two examples. In the area of analytics, we have studied the industry. We come with pre-built analytics, right? So it helps drive adoption. Second is around dynamic skills. Every organization struggles, right? I mean, talent management, the problem with talent management implementations, I don't have a skill ontology. So I am coming with a prescriptive skill ontology to say, can we, based on past experience? Obviously, we collaborate with the best of the consultants in the world. And that is the second thing that we do. The third thing is around contemporary digital technology. So we have these platforms. I spoke about gig and opportunity marketplace. The system has those platforms for exchange of gig workforce, internal gigs as well as external gigs, and the entire contract that happens between them. Also extending it to health, wellness, gamification. So that's where the fourth one is collaborative workplaces. How do you create continuous feedback? How do you create space for people for voice? So that's the fourth area that we're talking about. And finally, most important, it's not just about HR, right? It's about employee and employee experience. An employee can be a finance person, can be a procurement person, can be an HR person. So it's about giving everybody integrated processes. So we talk about integrated process, which is HR, finance, supply chain, customer experience at all the three levels: data, process, experience. And I think the journeys that I spoke about extends to a supply chain journey, a financials journey, and so on and so forth. And that's why journeys is what's the next investment point for us. So cross-pillar integration and journeys across are the kinds of innovative investments, Saurabh.
Thank you so much, Surya. This was really insightful, really interesting. I know you had to rush at the end, but thank you so much for your perspectives. Found them really interesting. Back to you, Isha. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you so very much for that very insightful talk. I'm sure our audience had a lot to learn from you. May I also request our delegates to please visit the Experience Zone, connect with our partners at the partner booth, get to know more about their products and services. I'd also like to request all of you to visit us at the Innovation Zone with startup booths, get to know what exciting elements are there for you. There's a lot happening, many chances for you to win some very exciting gift vouchers worth 5,000 rupees. So please go, connect, network, engage, and stay.